Good morning. You sound very asleep. Welcome to worship this morning. It's good to see everyone here. Today we're celebrating the original construction. Let me rephrase that. I'm not awake yet either. So we're marking today the 100-year anniversary of the dedication of the original building. So that would be where I'm standing, but where almost none of you are sitting. They're sitting. They're still in their pew. They're in the overflow, actually. That was the old overflow. So almost 100 years to this Sunday, they dedicated the original building. So we're going to be celebrating that, marking that. We actually still had the program from the service of dedication. So a lot of the elements from the service today are from that original service, but that original service from what I could tell was at least 3 hours long. This is not going to be that long, only 2.5. So it is History Sunday. A few little notes. You probably noticed in the back that Amy Johnson and Randy Johnson have pulled from family archives and church archives and put up a history display. Some things back there are familiar, some things I had not seen before, including one of the only picture I've ever seen of the inside of the 1920 church, and a picture of the inside of the 1800s church, which was down the street on Elm Street, near where the school is. We do still have a few relics from the original sanctuary. I am preaching instead of my usual music stand. This is the lay reader's lectern from the original sanctuary, which now runs, hangs out downstairs. The original communion table is the one with the tiles in the back. I only recently realized when I looked at the picture that the brown little table stands that we use all the time, those are from the original sanctuary as well. It makes sense. Basically, if it's brown, it's from the original sanctuary. If it's white, they bought it in the 1960s. That is pretty much how it works. But to refresh some memories, the original sanctuary stopped where those pillars are right there. It ran this way. It was, as we said, brown and not white. The pulpit was actually built into the rail. The communion table was right up in front. There was no window there. That was the organ, which was covered by a state-of-the-art plastic screen, the latest in church design. That's a quote from the article about the dedication. Who knew that plastic was once a luxury item? Back there were Sunday school rooms and the overflow. And the dome was clouds in the sky. The whole ceiling was blue. And you would sit under it. And as you daydreamed during the very long sermons of the day, you looked up at the clouds. That was the service. There are memories. Later in the service, we're going to be doing some storytelling. I'm going to invite anyone who has a memory of that original building to share. We also put it out on the Columbiana Facebook page. You got a lot of responses. I'm going to share some of those memories as well from the original building. So be thinking about those as we begin the service. On that dedication Sunday, they sang a lot of hymns that are still familiar to us. One of which, and which we'll start with, is Rejoice Ye Pure in Heart. It's number 804. If you're able, please stand. Please join with me in the call to worship, which was drawn from the service of dedication to the sanctuary. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein.
For he founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods.
Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God of his salvation. This is the generator of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in.
Who is the King of glory?
The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Our response is praise, oh praise our God and King, which is actually a hymn that is still familiar under a different title and with different words, but praise, oh praise our God and King, hymns of adoration sing, for his mercies still endure, ever faithful, ever sure. Praise him for our harvest store. He has built the garner floor. For his mercies still endure, ever faithful, ever sure. And for richer food than this, pledge of everlasting bliss, for his mercies still endure, ever faithful, ever sure. Glory to our bounteous King, glory, let creation sing, glory to Father, Son, and blessed Spirit, three in one. That hymn just gives you a little history, because I know you want it, and it is History Sunday. The words are actually by the poet John Milton and go back to the 1600s. Versions of the hymn have been sung ever since then. It is in our hymnal under a different title and with different stanzas from the same poem. To figure this all out, I went on to my massive Facebook group of over 10,000 music directors and clergy from around the world, and had to find someone who had a copy of the hymnal that was used at the dedication service in 1920. Because we only had hymn numbers and not names or first lines. And someone out there in internet world had a copy of the century hymnal from 1920. We do not, in this church, have a copy of the 1920 century hymnal. In all the nooks and crannies, I looked, they got rid of them at some point. Now there might be one in Marion's attic still, but I didn't look there. Part of that service was a grand prayer of dedication that happened before the guest preacher spoke. And we're going to pray a version of that in a way, a rededication now as we get toward the scripture and the doxology. So join me in this prayer. Holy, blessed, and glorious Trinity, three persons and one God, blessed be your name. Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, our Father which art in heaven, blessed be your name. Son of God, the only begotten of the Father, head of the body, which is the church, head over all things, prophet, priest, and king of thy people. Blessed be your name. Glorious and ever-present Spirit, who dwelleth in the hearts of thy people. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name, holy and everlasting God. We give you thanks for this holy house, the vision of our parents and grandparents built by human hands for your glory. A house within whose walls the gospel has been truly preached. A house within whose walls the sacraments have been faithfully administered. A house within whose walls the generations have offered prayer and praise. A house within whose walls the body of Christ has been nurtured through fellowship and support, meals and classes, weddings and funerals, in life and in death. We've celebrated our belonging within these walls. Well, we have within these walls faithfully proclaimed your love for us. We have not always faithfully lived out your command to love one another. These walls have not always encapsulated a heaven on earth, and we've not always been the most faithful of saints. We acknowledge and repent of the times when we've wounded and hurt each other, when we failed to offer holy welcome. Forgive us, Lord. Let us live in your grace. Bless these walls, these pews, this space again, so that it may be a place of holy welcome to many and diverse peoples, that all who seek you here may experience the resurrecting love of your Son, Jesus Christ, in their lives. And together the people proclaim, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. If you're able, please stand as we sing the doxology. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above the heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. You may be seated. It took a full week to dedicate the opening of First Presbyterian's brand new sanctuary. On Tuesday night, an organist from Pittsburgh gave a recital to celebrate the brand new organ, which was installed not where the organ is now, but along that wall. On Wednesday night, the service featured local clergy from all the neighborhood churches who were given a grand tour so they could now understand how the building hierarchy had shifted. And Thursday night, all the other pastors from the Presbyterian churches were invited, and the presbytery dignitaries gave speeches and celebrated the occasion. A homecoming celebration followed on Friday night, and then they took Saturday off to cook. And then on Sunday, this dedication day, it featured, as best as I can tell, 3 services. Sunday morning at 11, Sunday evening at 7, which was the actual dedication, featuring a guest preacher brought in all the way from Columbus. And in between, a youth rally. Because who wants to go home? And I'm sure, even though it wasn't in any of the programs, there was a lunch in there or a dinner in there or a something in there to make sure that everyone got fed and the new kitchen was appreciated appropriately. 2 years prior to November 6, 1921, the dedication day, very few in the congregation or in the town had even been thinking about a new church building. But First Presbyterian's modest brick sanctuary down on Elm Street, sort of behind Grace Church, was in the way of a proposed school expansion. They may not have wanted to build. It took 4 congregational meetings over the space of about 4 weeks for the congregation to agree to the school board's humble suggestion that they vacate their building and find someplace else. But once they decided to build, they did. They built big, they built fancy. Columbiana County had not seen a building like this. Worshipers entered over there through the portico. You can still see it with First Presbyterian Church across the stone lintel. That lintel was supported by 2 16-foot tall solid granite columns. They entered the side. They came up into this grand domed temple. The pews and paneling were of dark walnut. All the fixtures were of brass. The dome was roofed in copper. The rest of the roof was slate. And as I mentioned, the organ pipes were hidden behind a screen of the highest quality plastic that money could buy. Even the heating system was state of the art. The school board paid the congregation $7,000 for the old brick building. They would pay $65,000 to build the new one. I think they lost money on the deal. At the dedication service, perhaps in recognition of the amazing generosity and very quick generosity of the congregation, the preacher, or someone of that day, we don't know who read, turned to the end of the first book of Chronicles, chapter 29. He read the whole chapter. I will not. This is not the account of the dedication of the Jerusalem temple. It is an account of the fundraising for the Jerusalem temple. Reading as they did 100 years ago from 1 Chronicles chapter 29. King David said to the whole assembly, "My son Solomon, whom alone God has chosen, is young and inexperienced, and the work is great for the temple will not be for mortals, but for the Lord God. So I have provided for the house of my God so far as I was able, the gold for the things of gold, the silver for the things of silver, and the bronze for the things of bronze, the iron for the things of iron, and the wood for the things of wood, besides great quantities of onyx and stones for setting, antimony, colored stones, all sorts of precious stones, and marble in abundance. Moreover, in addition to all that I provided for the holy house, I have a treasure of my own of gold and silver, and because of my devotion to the house of my God, I give it to the house of my God. 3,000 talents of gold, of the gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver for overlaying the walls of the house, and for all the work to be done by artisans, gold for the things of gold and silver for the things of silver, who then will offer willingly, consecrating themselves to the Lord. Then the leaders of ancestral houses made their free will offerings, as did the leaders of the tribes, the commanders of the thousands and the hundreds, and the officers over the king's work. They gave for the service of the house of God 5,000 talents and 10,000 darics of gold, 10,000 talents of silver, 18,000 talents of bronze, and 100,000 talents of iron. Whoever had precious stones gave them to the treasury of the house of the Lord, into the care of Jehiel the Genocide. Then the people rejoiced, because these things had been given willingly, for with single mind they had offered freely to the Lord. King David also rejoiced greatly. And then David blessed the Lord in the presence of all the assembly. That is what they read on that Sunday 100 years ago. This morning, I want to offer a radically different reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 13. This just happens to be the reading for today. Jesus and his disciples have been worshiping in the temple in Jerusalem. And as they came out of the temple, one of Jesus' disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." Later, when Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this destruction of the temple be, and what will be the signs that all these things are about to be accomplished?" And then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." I wonder what the disciples thought as they walked out of that temple and Jesus started talking to them about how it would become rubble. It must have seemed like blasphemy to even suggest that this great monument to God could crumble to the earth. The grand temple, the spiritual heart of ancient Judaism, the place where Jesus and his disciples, generations of Jews and Israelites, their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, their great-great-grandparents, all the way back hundreds and hundreds of years might be restored, destroyed. Not one stone left upon another. All would be torn down. Solomon built the first Jerusalem temple around 960 BC. That's the one his father was raising money for in the passage we read. It would be destroyed about 400 years later in 586 BC, rebuilt in 520 BC, heavily renovated around 20 BC, and then destroyed again in 70 AD, an event that was likely witnessed by those who first read the Gospel of Mark. How it must have seemed to them as they watched the Romans enter Jerusalem and burn the place to the ground, destroy the temple, kill the priests, that the world had come to an end. Some of you sitting here probably remember the debates that must have happened in the late 1950s and early 1960s, as only 40 years after the first sanctuary was dedicated, the congregation debated moving into a new, larger, brighter, more modern sanctuary. I'm sure some look forward to it. Times were changing. Church was changing. There weren't enough seats on Christmas Eve. Others probably wondered why, maybe a tweak here and a tweak there, what they had given money for, what their parents had given money for, was somehow no longer good enough. In the end, the concerns of the second group didn't really matter. Architects were hired, funds were raised, the west wall was busted open. The grand pillars of the entryway were tumbled down. The old dark pews removed. A central aisle, perfect for weddings, was installed, and everything was painted white. Large Sunday school rooms, an expanded office for the pastor. The original pastor office was literally where the organ pipes are and was about that size. In that day and age, pastors didn't work in the church office, they worked at home. That was only to store a few things for church and put on a robe and maybe get nasty words out of your system before you had to preach. Whatever preachers do before the service, that's all that happened there. But the new 1950s church needed an office for the pastor, the CEO of the congregation. Times had changed. Between 1920 and 1960, Northeast Ohio had changed. It was booming. It was growing. It was rich. And the respectable people went to respectable churches. In the same time, in the presbytery, Christ Presbyterian Church over by Mill Creek Park went from 0 members to 1,000 members in 10 years. We just closed that church, by the way. 10 years, 0 to 1,000. Steel mill executives, Lordstown people, Same people who are filling this church at the time. The 1920s church, interestingly enough, was much more mobile than the 1950s church. I mentioned that the pastor usually worked from home or visit people at their jobs or at their homes. If you look back in the session minutes, the session almost never met in the church. The session met also in people's homes. The meeting to decide about the school board offer was held in the office of Dr. Harry Bookwalter. The school board, by the way, was meeting in another doctor's office just down the street. After the Presbyterians had finished their meeting in Dr. Bookwalter's office, they all went to the other doctor's office a few doors down to see the school board. Nobody was meeting in the church. In a different way, we've almost returned to that age. Mobile technology means that offices have become vague. I literally now work almost anywhere. This week, I have worked in the coffee shop. I've worked in people's houses. I've worked in my own house. The one place I really haven't been this week has been in my wonderful office here at the church. That's not always true, but this week it is true. And when someone needed something at the church, someone who was hoping to find Judy here, but she's been sick, she easily reached me on my cell phone in Austintown. I've become mobile. Reverend McGrath, also, who was pastor here at the time, was mobile. You probably did not look for Reverend McGrath at the church. You just wandered around town calling his name, and someone would tell you where he was. COVID has pushed us out. We've worshiped outside. We're worshiping online. People don't come into churches, so we go out. The hub storytelling event is not in this building, it's in the park. Why? Because when we have events in the park, more people come than when we have them in the building. They're more comfortable. Times have changed. Society is changing. And I wonder, honestly, about where 100 years later this building fits in. And I love this building. I love something most of you rarely experience, which is the life in a sanctuary around 7 o'clock in the morning, when it's coming in these windows and filtering through the door in the back. I love the joy of giving tours of this building. People marvel at it. It's beautiful. They love it, and they're astounded when I open the door that goes to the choir pipes, and there behind that door is a beautiful stained glass window, the most beautiful, in my opinion, in this whole church, with the exception of its twin, which is in the back stairwell. That is where you put the most beautiful stained glass window, in the stairs to the kitchen. I love my office that I don't use that much, with its miles of bookcases and its beautiful green couch. And I'm not being sarcastic. I love how we pulled together to redo the basement and how we provide in our space warm welcome for seeking adults, motivated young girls, and families struggling to get out of poverty. I love the organ, and I love in this space here, we'll be able to put the Sandbach Chorus and the Dana Chorale together, if they choose to, without missing a beat. I also struggle with how this building sits empty most of the time while eating money. It costs $30,000 a year just to keep this here. I struggle with how a sanctuary built for a much larger congregation in a much different age deadens our worship, splinters our community, and repels visitors. But this is our home. It was shared to me a few weeks ago by someone with a history in this congregation about how when they enter, when they sit in their pew, they feel safe, they feel connected. It's where they come to heal. On Sunday mornings, she comes, she sits, surrounded by memories, surrounded by ghosts, surrounded by God. The same disciples who were shocked when Jesus suggested the Jerusalem temple might be destroyed walked away from it in 70 AD without looking back. I'm sure they mourned. I'm sure they missed the memories, the rituals, the architecture, but they were already meeting in homes, meeting in businesses, meeting in the marketplace, the public squares, wherever 2 or 3 of them had occasion to gather, they knew that God would be there. And they met. Christ was with them. So 100 years later, we're facing the realities that we may, in the next couple of years, have some hard choices to make in the life of our congregation. Choices including how are we in a changing congregation, a changing culture, a changing economy, a changing community going to support this building. I honestly don't know what those choices will be or even should be. I know that they will be hard, whatever they are. I also know that our parents and our grandparents left us an amazing gift, a testament to their faithfulness, a testament to their commitment to this community, their commitment to their church, their commitment to their God. A gift that has served us well and is still serving us well. I also know that our God cannot and is not contained within these walls. And neither can our ministry and our desire to impact our community. We're going to sing a hymn they did not sing then. We know it better. The church is one foundation. And then I'm going to invite you to share memories of the old building, not the new building where you sing now, the old building, if you have any. And I'm going to share some of the things that were put up on Facebook. Hymn number 321, The Church's One Foundation. who has a memory and I want you to actually come up and share it so that Sue-Ann and Ruth on, they can actually see you. And plus we'll preserve this somewhat as kind of an oral history. So if you have a memory of the 1920s building pre-renovation, I invite you to come up and share. And yes, Mary Jane, I know you have to have some memories. And Miriam, I don't know if Janet, you have some memories back that far, but we'll let Amy go first.
Okay, thanks. Well, my memories consist of sitting in the, the wooden pews with my family and my whole family, which was so nice in those days. I have definite memories of that with Mom, of course, with my dad, who's been gone for a long time now, with my brother Mark, and all the grandparents. My dad's mom, Grandma Hudson, and Grandpa Esterly, and then Grandma Hildred Esterly, although she wouldn't have been sitting with us because she was in the choir. And just for a fun fact, she would have been singing in the choir with Randy and Jean's mother, Donna Johnson, also. To me, that's one of the best memories, just sitting with my family growing up in this church so long ago, when the church was packed with so many people. We knew everyone's name, and they were all a family.
And what is really clear, I just want to tell you that my grandfather's whole life, the highlight of his life was the building of this church. And as I understand, if you're a minister, I don't know how Fritz feels, but that was sort of, to think that you have built a church was a really cool. And the second thing I want to say is about when we put the new addition on. It was in the 50s, was after the Second World War. And in the church, it was a wonderful time. Everyone came back from that war, the boys, and people went back to church. And at the time when we decided to build this church, they thought we're going to have 500 people, because there was so many people. So that's my story.
Okay, I remember this was like my foundation, our whole family, like every activity that we were involved in mostly revolved around the church. I didn't come until I was in 5th grade because we went to a Baptist church in Rainford. And when I came, it was like home. Everybody was so welcoming and warm. And my biggest memories are fellowship, junior high fellowship with Mrs. Barber and senior high fellowship with Odie and Mary Crum. We had some wonderful times downstairs. Actually, it was so small down there. I remember it being small and I wasn't that big. But I have always loved this church. My family has been here for many years. And I remember the pew we sat in. This is the pew we sat in once this church was built. The pew we sat in was over by the window, by that cross. So that's where we sat every Sunday. Thank you.
I remember when I was the elementary age, I'm sure a lot of you remember when we had the building next door where the marketplace is now. That's where we held our Sunday school classes because the rooms all here were full. And I know I had Sunday school there. My mother, her Sunday school class was there also. Another very fond memory is what we call youth fellowship. It was from junior high age to high school. we'd have 18 to 20 to 25 every Sunday night. We would have devotions and maybe a little reading or something, and then we would go downstairs and play ping pong or whatever. The fellowship was so great. And lots of times we would invite other youth from other churches to come and participate. And that was a big memory to me. I made a lot of friends that way from other churches and even older people than me that maybe were seniors and maybe I was in 9th grade. So a lot of good memories in this church.
Do you remember the gym? Were those?
Okay, well, knowing where you sit, as you can tell, we sat front row center, always there. Mostly, I think it was so Mom could see us from the choir loft, and Dad was there, so that we couldn't do anything. But it was just what you did. We were there every Sunday. I know one time it was embarrassing because they made all of us stand up to say, oh, perfect attendance for the Johnson family for Sunday school and church. And it was like, yeah, okay, you're about 7. I'm going, yeah, I don't really want to stand up. But then they made Linda and me stand on the pew because we were too short to be seen. And we're going, that was the idea. But anyhow, there are so many memories of it was family. I mean, the Sunday school rooms. I remember the women's hats. That was a fascinating thing every Sunday, was to see what hat these women were going to wear, especially Mrs. Wagner, Craig's mom, and just there's so many hats and their stoles with the fox that you stared long enough, you were sure it was going to bite you. It just. But Reverend Scheidmantel to Reverend Lyman, in the end, my dad was the treasurer of the building thing. So every Sunday night, we got an adding machine. It was pretty cool to see him always working on that. But Mom in the choir and Sunday school, it was always fun because Sunday school was kind of devastating. We had a Sunday school house before they built this that you went for Sunday school, and then you came over here for church. And just when I was the age that I was going to get to go upstairs, which was always a fascinating secret to me because I'd never been up there, they moved Sunday school over here. So I never got to go upstairs. Never did see upstairs, but it was so many memories of so many people that were family and everything. And Reverend Scheidmantel visiting. And he hated Dad's peanut butter fudge, but Mrs. loved it, so yeah.
Some people who checked in on Facebook, Candy Bush checked in and talked about her aunt meeting her uncle at Sunday school at First Pres. Jackie Mayer checked in and she remembered staring at the clouds in the sky in the dome, and that was a favorite memory. Carl Pritchard seconded that memory and said that there was a small alcove off to the right that was at that point the heathen section. Not back there, the heathen section, but there was another heathen section, and I guess all the Pritchards sat in the heathen section. William Ward checked in with just a description of the inside of the building. Suzanne Harveth, Suzanne Nelson Harvest played the organ when Mrs. Barrow was on vacation. Joan Carpenter checked in. Her dad was pastor 1939 to 43. I'm not sure who that would be. And Mary Ellen Burkhart checked in. That would be Reverend Scheidmantle's daughter. She remembered, several people remembered piano or organ lessons with Margaret Barrett. More dome memories. Rachel Kuhlman had dome memories and is advocating for it being restored and repainted. The voice of Pam Darrell Maple, who I guess was a beautiful soprano.
Dalrymple. Yeah, Pam Dalrymple.
Dalrymple, okay. Pat Straw checked in. That would be Pat Gabe, whose mom was treasurer. Marley Ritchie checked in. She got bored a lot in the church. And those are most of the people who checked in with memories about this church. Let's wrap up our service with a hymn that they did sing on that day. Number 687, O God, our help in ages past. And then we'll close with Go My Children. And then stay where you are and don't talk. We're going to have a recorded postlude. They closed the original dedication service with a solo. And the solo was this song very popular in the 1920s called Open the Gates of the Temple. And thanks to the internet, we have a 1921 recording of that song. Not sung here, but it was a record. It was a record made into a record, and it was a record popular in that day. If you're able, please stand. Let's sing. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope in years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast and our eternal home. Verse 3. Before the hills in order stood, or earth received as you go into the next 100 years. The church continues. We have our memories of the past, but we also have our future. For it's bigger than us, greater than us. And the Spirit keeps moving. And we keep following. As we use this building, we keep following. As we go into the park, into the marketplace, we keep following. Looking forward. Looking for the day when Christ will build more of his kingdom in our midst. And the day that Christ will return in all of his glory. And as you go into this week, into this century, go knowing that the love of God, the fellowship of Christ, and the communion of the Holy Spirit will be with you now and always. Hallelujah and amen.